that's where our product analysts are truly making a difference in being able to take that data, create viable actions for their product team and recommendations that they're making to improve those experiences and solve customer problems, real customer problems, not things that they think are customer problems.
Welcome to Productside Stories, the podcast where we reveal the very real and raw lessons learned from product leaders and thinkers all over the world. I'm your host, Rena Lexon, CEO of Productside. Let's dive into today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Jesse Vergara, the Director of Digital Product Management at Nationwide. Jesse, I think you've been at Nationwide for quite a bit, and you have come up with the very unique and new concept of the Product Analyst role. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today. But first, the question I like to ask everybody that joins our podcast is, why product management? How did you get started?
Yeah, so first and foremost, thank you for having me on the podcast today. I'm really excited. I'm passionate about not only this topic, but product management. And so, what really got me into product management is my passion for people. And probably I want to say about 8 years ago, we started moving from a plan, build, run model within our organization to an agile model and an agile framework. And as part of that, we recognize a need as our IT partners were starting to shift how they were starting to deliver. It required a more product-centric approach. And so our product team started to evolve just kind of naturally out of business need based on decisions that were made in order to and more effectively and move away from the waterfall delivery methodology. And so that's kind of what sparked my interest in product management. And I've served in a number of roles. I've served as a product manager. I've served as a product owner. And one of the things that I knew that I struggled with at times was not only access to data, but knowing whether the data was accurate, knowing whether the data, where all of the data was, and ensuring that there were apples to apples comparisons of data across business units. So one business unit may be, at times they were pulling data from different sources, but it wasn't consistent. And so you weren't getting a consistent message from the data. People were telling the data stories that they wanted to tell. That was a need that we identified. And as our product organization started to grow and evolve, we used to pull in data analysts and data scientists from other parts of our organization into ours. And what we found was they could give us the information. What they couldn't do is give us specific information about our particular product. And so that's where the product analyst comes in. They, for us, are an integral part of the line, similar to that of a product owner and a product manager. They sit with the line, they work with the engineers, they work with the product team as a whole, user experience, everybody, and they are focused on the product itself, understanding where all those data points are and the sources, and then translating those data points and sources into viable actions that can be taken for the product team based on product results.
So you are working as part of a team at Nationwide where 8 years ago now, there's a need for more of a product management discipline. I'm hearing essentially a story that I hear over and over again of going from project-based delivery to a product-based delivery. And as part of that maturity, it sounds like, and of course, a company like Nationwide, which I think operates so much on data, like so much that's probably very core to your business.
Yes.
Right? Like actuaries and just really, really complex data modeling. It makes sense to me that you also see the need for potentially I guess it's what you're arguing for essentially is a dedicated resource for the product team, that when the resource is dedicated versus borrowed, you're arguing that there is more ownership over driving those outcomes.
Correct.
Okay, I hear that, but shouldn't the product manager do this?
Yeah, I definitely, absolutely. There are definitely some areas of overlap. I think the product manager certainly needs to have an analytical mindset in which they can interpret data, understand what the data is telling us so that they can help drive the vision for the product. But what this segmentation has done for us by separating the role of the product manager and the product owner and the analyst is the product manager now has a sole focus on the vision and continuing to evolve that vision of the product. So the product analyst leans in a couple of different ways to help support that. They'll work with the product manager in areas like pre-discovery and discovery to help identify where the product needs to continue to evolve over the next 18 to 24 months. And they'll do so they do a lot of market research. They'll work with user experience team to do different things, whether it's testing with customers, whether it's just research, using voice of customer. They're looking at all of the product specific data and industry data and reporting back to the product manager, creating insights so that the product manager can again focus on the vision and ensuring that the product team is aligned to that vision for execution. Similar to that with the product owner, right? The product owner is really executing against that vision. They're the delivery arm, managing the backlog, working with stakeholders again to understand. And so the product analyst really flows across all. They're working with the product team to understand what's in place today and how are we measuring our performance. And let's validate that it's working the way it should. If not, we should be coming up with viable recommendations to the product team for how to improve those experiences or customer journeys. Secondly, they're working again with the product manager on the more long-term, more strategic activities that need to take place in order for the product to continue to sustain itself going forward.
Okay, so Jesse, again, I'm hearing a lot of overlap, right? And so this is probably, and we need to talk about where does it make sense? Like where is there truly ROI from this kind of position? Because if I see a company and I see the need for additional headcount, right? I'm just thinking, then it must be that my current headcount has too many things happening where certain valuable activities are not taking place. So let's kind of paint the picture, the business case for a product analyst from the perspective of what do you see in companies? Well, I guess we do need to go and define what kinds of companies would benefit from this role. Let's do that first. And then the point I'm trying to get to is what is the work in those kinds of companies that isn't getting done that is valuable enough to merit headcount increase?
Sure.
So let's do the companies first. So paint the picture of what companies would benefit from this.
Yeah. So what I would say is that companies like ours, we're a very large company. And what typically happens with very large companies is it takes time to change. It's a big ship to steer. And so this product model will and may not work for everybody, right? This is not, this model might not be the best for like product purists, where it's a smaller company, they have access directly to the CEO, to others where, have 200, 300, 400 people. This is not necessarily for that audience, right? This is for your larger companies that I believe have a lot of data that they need to focus on, and they require areas of expertise in not only interpreting that data, but helping drive the business. So for instance, right, data dashboard development. Product managers don't typically want to do that or have the skill to be able to develop dashboards in a lot of cases, right? I know I'll speak for myself. I certainly did not have these skills that were necessary in order to build effective dashboards that were consistent, repeatable, and had great information. Our product analysts are. And by having that information and knowing that it's trusted sources, that's a gap that has been filled by filling this role. The other thing I will tell you is that we have saved countless hours just as a result of having product analysts. So I'll give you one example. We have product analysts that have leveraged Power BI and Power Automate within our core systems to reduce work by about $40 a month, or 40 hours a month, 40 hours a month per associate with the dashboards with the integration of new technology, that has saved them manual work and effort that was done in the past, whether that was voice of customer insights. Right now, we have it in dashboards and we have sentiment analysis that we can very clearly articulate, understand what they're saying, understand where there are blockers or issues, and develop or devise solutions to try to address those. Those things didn't exist before without having a dedicated resource. That time savings and cost savings for at least just one person, 40 hours a month is significant. That gives them time to do real valuable work like digging into the data, analyzing the information.
So I mean, companies do, I hear you. Maybe some companies are better at it, especially smaller, more digitally native companies. They are operating with a data mindset from the beginning. But even larger companies, I mean, people build dashboards, right? They do. What is different about somebody who would belong? I mean, wouldn't it be part of a data team? Like, why a product analyst?
Yeah, so certainly there are some overlapping skills. We could easily have just a data analyst or a data scientist come in and do
Business
some of those
analyst,
things,
right?
or even business analysts. I don't know. They'd have to be technically skilled.
Sure.
Understanding SQL and Python and some other things that are required. But so there is definitely some overlap. I think the big gap that we have closed is really having that product knowledge. It is having the understanding of that domain, the domain knowledge and expertise of being able to look at the data, understand, know that in fact already it is good data. They know where it's coming from, and then they can tailor solutions based on that data and voice of customer feedback. We leverage voice of customer feedback significantly to ensure that our journeys are going well or are working as designed and planned. And if they're not, we have very clear insight into where those opportunities are. And that's where our product analysts are truly making a difference in being able to take that data, create viable actions for the product team and recommendations that they're making to improve those experiences and solve customer problems, real customer problems, not things that they think are customer problems.
That's a pretty big distinction, right? Things that you think might be customer problems
Right.
versus real problems. Okay, so right now we're seeing obviously AI come into the picture, and a lot of companies are trying to find what is the appropriate use case at my company to install some kind of either machine learning, some kind of algorithm, or use generative AI in some way. And one of the biggest challenges when you go into a company that wants to do this is they can't because their data is not clean or they don't collect the right data in the right format. So is this also the role envisioned for a product analyst to make sure that the data is collected appropriately at the different wherever it needs to be collected and it is accurate? Because I also heard you mention accuracy.
Yes. So it is a part of their role. With a company or an enterprise as big as Nationwide, there are a lot of systems in a lot of different areas. And so it requires a lot of collaboration with those other areas that may own some of those other platforms or have responsibility for those platforms to understand how the data is captured and then determine how we integrate it into a single source of truth so that we can tell the stories that we need to tell. That's not easy. We are actually still figuring that out, right? But I can tell you we are much further ahead now than we were 8 years ago, and we're way further ahead now, even than a year ago when you started to see things like ChatGPT really blow up and new technologies. There are new technologies. There are companies out there that are insurtechs that are starting new things and creating new things that, quite frankly, maybe some of our innovation organizations might be thinking about or considering, but we don't necessarily have access to without them. And so we have to continuously look at the industry, look at the marketplace, understand what's out there to see what's evolved, what competitors have evolved and the tools that we do have and use, and determine how do we continue to get clean data. Part of that responsibility certainly lies on our product analysts to ensure that any data that is pulled in so that we have a single source of truth is accurate and easily understandable and repeatable so that should something break, it's easily fixable.
So, Jesse, I've heard and I've seen over I would say probably 4 or 5 years, a bigger practice around product operations. Product operations, I do find, takes a different flavor in different companies. Some of them are really focused on communities of practice,
Yeah.
and some I think are more in this more associate supportive role. Because, I mean, you don't have to argue with me that product managers have a lot to do, but not all of it gets done.
Yeah.
And so, there definitely has been a need, I think, especially in large enterprise organizations, that is being addressed by product operations teams. Does this role fit in a product operations team to support an overall product management organization? Or do you really envision this as like a team member on the product team in line with like a dedicated product manager, engineer, designer, all of that?
Yeah. So in understanding a little bit about product operations and how that's evolved, should our organization evolve there, I certainly think it could reside within product operations. However, given our current structure and how our teams are formed at the moment, I still believe that this is really a role that should be recognized industry-wide as just as common as the product owner and product manager, because I feel they play such a critical role in improving efficiency and really driving product performance at the product level, at that macro level, or
Okay, but
micro
then
level.
talk
Yeah,
to me here. I'm a product leader. I have a team. Let's say I have a team of a dozen, one more person on my team.
sure.
How do I make that case?
Yeah. So the way I would make the case is through the benefits that we have already seen, right? I've shared one example of where we've increased productivity from a resource perspective by 40 hours a month, right? In addition to that, we've increased the identification of issues, defects, enhancements, opportunities like that through the product analyst role that we may not have even identified because a product manager may not have the time to get all the things done that they would have been required to get done at times. And when you look at products, it should be very iterative, right? The product should never die unless there is end of life intended for that product. It's got to continue to evolve. The product analyst allows that to take place in our particular case and scenario. It allows them to focus on those things, raise up concerns and issues, and make recommendations that allow that product to continue to flourish while new products and features are being developed.
So, have you found, just in your personal experience, right? Because I like that. Like, that's a really hard data. Well, some people might say it's a soft data point with productivity savings, right? But at least it's something that you could point to of here's all the work that used to go into these kinds of analyses that no longer needs to happen. So, therefore, there is that savings. But it's when you look at headcount, and I think a lot of product leaders do need to do this real assessment on their team of what a sprint costs the company.
Yeah.
Right. If whatever that sprint costs, if the value that they are producing is not higher than that, then it's value destruction.
Yep.
Right. It's too many resources. And then a lot of teams on top of that is sometimes people don't even think is not just in the agile, like in the sprint way, but how much is all of the engineering resources, all of those that are not sometimes not dedicated to a sprint costing. So this, when you add a resource like this, it increases the team cost overall, right? It's fixed cost.
Sure.
So so that's what I'm trying to say is like, are you expecting more? You should be expecting more out of each sprint. And so can you track that? Do you have a before and after view? I mean, you see some benefits, but do you have a before and after view of the value of each sprint?
Yeah, absolutely. Working with our IT partners and understanding the sprints, right? Our business operates a little bit differently as well, right? This isn't so we don't necessarily rely on like venture capitalist money to get products out the door, right? But we do rely on either our own internal budgets or business partner budgets to get work done, right? We plan and account for that. If there wasn't value, right, and if the costs were greater than the value being provided to the customer, we wouldn't we would not be doing it. And it's a question you have to ask. For us in our particular scenario, the value that we see is that we've seen the opportunity for the product to get better increase over time with the addition of a product analyst role than we did when they weren't on the line and participating in the product sprints. So we have seen value, and we've seen it in cost avoidance by identifying issues immediately when they've occurred through voice of customer feedback. That again, in larger companies, many things are still batch processed, right? You wait for information. It's not necessarily always available at your fingertips when you need it. We're changing that, right? We're not 100% there, but we're changing that so that we can identify those things and then create those savings, right? It's both operational savings. There are cost savings, and there is a cost associated with having each and every person. It doesn't matter who is there, right? Whether you have 3 UX people, 5 engineers, it doesn't matter. There's a cost associated with having them all there. And so there has to be value add through each and every one of those resources. We have identified and found value add in having product analysts as part of our product teams.
So then paint this picture. So when did you start with this role at Nationwide, and has it spread to other teams?
Yes. So we started with this role at Nationwide in the 2019-2020 timeframe. And of course, in 2020, COVID hit. It forced a lot of companies to do a lot of things differently. We weren't any different. We had to think of different ways, and there were people working from home, and there were just new operating models that we had to quickly develop or accelerated, especially from a digital perspective. Things accelerated greatly once COVID occurred. And so for us, what we are doing in our particular organization, right, we are setting the standard within our enterprise for what product management looks like for us, right? And so as we have business units that we interact with, we are not only executing on the digital components of the work that we own, but we are consulting and helping them drive value through their teams to deliver in a consistent manner that aligns with our product philosophy and doesn't create every group now creating different product models, right? We want consistency. We need consistency. And so that's where our team and our expertise comes into play. The things that we're doing, we're not asking people to do what we do because we think it's right. We're asking people to do what we're doing because we're doing it, and we're doing it consistently. And we have a proven model that's worked for us since 2020 and has continued to evolve. We didn't have all the answers then. We certainly don't have all the answers now, but we're well better positioned to be able to address customer needs quicker in a more timely manner with better data.
So Jesse, this role would be reporting into like a director or product leader role like yourself. Do you have, I suppose, from a managerial perspective, how should a director think about managing this role and establishing, I suppose, like what kinds of KPIs should they be managing their people to? Because it's a different role than managing a product manager.
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing to account for this particular role in the people is understanding at the end of the year, some of the things that we're looking at, actually, it's not just at the end of the year, but when you're measuring someone, you're looking at what things did you identify? Maybe there's a product out there that didn't have access to data. So maybe there may have been a focus on getting that data available to that product team, right? Each product team is going to be in a little different place. Our product teams in particular in digital are a little bit more mature. So those aren't things that we're necessarily focused on anymore, but we were creating dashboards that were easily accessible, that tell the story without having to do a ton of work on the back end in order to tell that story, or take it and put it into PowerPoint and do all these things that people end up doing, right? We want to be able to pull up a dashboard, the data's there, it makes sense, and we know what actions need to take place. We try to identify trend analysis within that data, et cetera. So some of those key KPIs are how are we improving the product? Well, how many recommendations were made over each iteration, or how many recommendations were made over a particular period of time in which the product team implemented, and what was the value? What outcome did it achieve? Did it achieve the outcome that we anticipated it would when we identified that issue? Those are things. The other things that I really hold my team accountable for are not just KPIs, but CPIs, customer performance indicators, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to look at the customer. Our customer needs to be a huge input into our organization and the experiences that they have, not just within the digital channels. We certainly care about those and want to make sure those experiences are what is intended, but we want to understand when there are challenges and they end up going cross-channel. Why? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they start in the digital channel and switch? Why did they pick up a phone and call? Let's understand that, because that's experience-based. Or, even with things like chat technology, right? We use chatbots, we have Nora. It's a tremendous tool. However, if it doesn't meet the customer need and they're not getting the question that they need answered, then we're not doing it good enough. And so understanding all of those customer performance indicators as well, that say, hey, from a digital perspective, I'm trying to do this and I can't.
Yeah.
Then we need to be solving that.
I really like this term, customer performance indicator. It really calls into perspective. We talk a lot about product side. We talk a lot about business outcomes and product outcomes. And I like having the difference, right? I might even start using that. I like that a lot. Like, really puts into mind that certain indicators or metrics are really driving customer behaviors that you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I have maybe a couple more questions. I'm struggling here in that the product analyst role, as you are describing, is a very IC driven role. What's the next stage? Like, if you're a product analyst, do you become director of product? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where's the career ladder going, and with which team?
Yeah. So what I really love about how we've structured our organization is we have multiple career paths for junior level product analyst versus senior level analyst, et cetera, right? We have data offices across the organization that could serve as potential areas for those folks to grow and develop into as well. But what I really love is, because they're integrated into the product team, if they have the skills and they want to become a product owner, they can move into that role. And again, to your point, if I have now someone that understands the product analyst side and can do the data analysis and is interested and has the skill and the ability to perform at a product owner and or product manager role, they can move into those roles. And it may, in that particular instance, eliminate or mitigate a need for a full-time product analyst in the space, right? It really depends. If you have that unicorn of a person that can do all those things, that makes the case a lot easier to say, hey, we can do this without a product analyst, and let's test this theory and prove it out.
So then I'm hearing from you essentially a call to all young people out there who are potentially looking for a way into product management, and potentially the product analyst role being a really good career path, because it sets them up for having a more robust data skill set.
Absolutely. And I've actually had product analysts move into product manager roles. That's part of the joy of being able to lead this group of people that I get to lead, is they've developed skills. They have the skills needed to interact with stakeholders. They're interacting with stakeholders all the time because they're the ones that know the data inside and out. And so if you can interact with stakeholders and you can tell a story through data, you can be an effective product manager. You can be an effective product owner.
So, what advice do you have for someone starting out? Because there aren't many product analyst roles. So, what should somebody who's really interested in this role be doing to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, I think the things that they can do is a have an analytical mindset. It certainly is a requirement. Be data and customer driven, right? It doesn't matter what data you have if it doesn't address customer needs and customer problems. It's almost worthless, right? It's almost worthless. I mean, everything we do is customer centric, right? We have to have a customer centric mindset. And I tell my team and I tell everyone I interact with, quite frankly, if the work that you're doing, A, doesn't align to the outcomes that are associated with that work, and B, does not have the customer in mind, whether it's addressing a current customer pain point or addressing a future customer need, then you really need to question whether we should be doing it, right? And so what that does is it allows not only that particular role of the product analyst, but it holds everybody accountable to that same standard. To where if we're not being customer focused and we're not driving for solutions that matter to our members and customers, then we need to question whether or not we should do it. There are things that need to be done. There's always technical debt that needs to occur or that needs to be done. There are those things that have to happen. But again, those things also should be happening because there's a customer need. So it's a cost avoidance or an experience avoidance that we don't want the customer to have or experience. And so I think, when they're looking, any kind of analysis training that they can do, I coach my team on being able to tell a story through data, right? Taking classes around storytelling, looking at different analytics, understanding you may not be a technical person, but you have to understand technology, right? And it helps. It helps to be even more effective if you understand programming languages and how to take data from different sources and pull it together and how to interpret that data. You have to have a data-centered culture, though, in order for that to occur. And as the role has evolved over time, we have seen needs of the role continue to shift to having that more technical mindset and needing to understand Python and SQL and some of the other tools in order to be able to data engineer where they need to, right? We want to eliminate that, but they may have to data engineer sometimes. And so having that school and having, again, a robust skill set that allows them to do the technical work, interpret it, consume it, and make it consumable for others and tell data through that story, I think are really key things. And so that's where I try to coach people to learn and develop skills. And then you always have your soft skills. You have to have business acumen. It helps to understand the business that you're in. It helps to understand the marketplace and where others are performing in the same areas that you're working in, whether that's a mobile team or whether it's login and registration preferences, conversational with chat. You have to have a good understanding or what I call peripheral vision. So I'm a big baseball fan. And if you're a pitcher on the mound, you have to have peripheral vision to know what the base runners are doing in order to know whether you want to throw over and pick someone off or if you're going to make that pitch. It's no different. We have to have people that have that peripheral vision that understand where we're at in the moment, but also where we're going and anticipating where we need to be based on customer needs. And our customer needs are no longer compared to other companies like us. We are still compared to that, but it's broader. Our digital experiences are compared to all the other digital experiences in mobile apps, right? And so that's a big bar. That's a big bar to understand how do we make our experiences consistent with other experiences that may or may not have anything to do with our industry. Those are challenging things to accomplish.
Yeah, and I would definitely not disagree with anything that you are saying. And this is precisely why the job of, I would say, a product manager, it's so crucial, but it's also really difficult to find those unicorns. And
Yes.
so one of the things that I learned in this conversation with you is It sounds to me that data and data analysis and having just at least an understanding of how to get it, making sure that it's accurate, and how to use it to drive decision making, in your experience, that skill set is so vital that you're growing your own unicorns by
That's right.
having this product analyst role.
That's right. And what's beautiful is we're not only growing our own, but we're growing those unicorns so that if they choose to go into other organizations, they're now taking that digital mindset, that experience, and the learnings that they've had within our organization out to them. And they are now advocates and are really talking the same language in those new organizations when they join them, right? It's a tremendous skill and opportunity to be able to come and learn in our organization and then take that and pay it forward in other organizations and make them more effective and efficient as well.
I totally support what you are saying. I do still stand that, and I think we agree that this kind of role is probably best in an enterprise with a lot of data where product managers have too much of an exhaustive list or inexhaustive list of things to do, where this kind of support, especially if they don't have that internal skill set around data management or data wrangling sometimes.
Yes.
I think it can be helpful. And where that role lives, if sometimes it can be on a data team, sometimes it can be on a product operations team, or sometimes it can be its own role, as you're arguing. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for joining me today in this very insightful conversation. How can people find you after they listen to this podcast?
Yeah. So the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. I've provided a link. But if you search Jesus Vergara, Jesus Vergara, I'll be on LinkedIn. And I'm open to conversations like this to where we can just have dialogue. We don't necessarily always have to agree, but I think we can learn from one another nonetheless. And so that's what this is all about. It's about thought leadership, thinking just a little bit differently, challenging the norms, and pushing the product management different discipline to new heights and expectations across organizations.
Well, I think you just summarized the goal of Productside Stories. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you all for tuning into this episode. I do hope today's story did inspire you. Our conversation maybe gave you some new ideas in your organization. Now I'm wondering how many more product analysts will I see out there? And I do hope, and we hope that it helped propel your product journey forward. Remember, every challenge is a lesson waiting to be learned. Visit us at productside.com for more free resources, such as webinars, playbooks, templates, and other product wisdom repackaged for you. I'm Rena Lexon, and until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep sharing great stories.